Today, I'm going to talk about the top 10 unwritten rules of fishing that you need to write down and definitely follow. What is up, Outdoor Mavericks, and welcome back to the channel. Now, just like in baseball, fishing has unwritten rules, and you got to be careful and follow them, or you could get in a fight on the riverbank. Don't ask me how I know. They're not in fishing regulations or anywhere else, so grab a pen, write these down, and make sure you follow these top 10 unwritten rules of fishing. Now, we're kicking off the list at number 10, which is don't take your time at the boat launch. There's always that one person every single day or throughout the season that always takes their time at the boat launch. And proper etiquette at the boat launch is you get your boat off the trailer, you get it onto the dock, and you get out fishing. The dock isn't a place to lollygag, to chat it up with everybody else to find out what's going on. Get your boat launched, get your boat off the trailer, get off the dock, and get moving down the river. And get out of other people's ways because they could be docking their boat or trying to get into the water. Now, I've had this feeling before, and it can be infuriating to sit there and watch people lollygag and take their time at the boat launch. Because you just want to get in and get out and get moving. That's what the boat launch should be. And there's reasons why there's signs up at the boat launches that say 15 minutes. Because you shouldn't be there all freaking day. Now, the worst case I ever saw was this guy who had 3 kids and probably had 4 dogs with them. I mean, they must have taken a half an hour at the boat launch because they had to walk down the long ramp. They're waiting for the kids to finish their snacks. Then the one kid is starting to cry. They can't get everything organized. Then the boat doesn't start up. And then he's just sitting there and just lollygagging, calling people on the phone. Dude, either launch your boat or get out of the way. Like, this isn't social hour or time for you to maintenance your boat at the boat dock. If it doesn't work, pull the boat back out or move out of the way so other people can launch their boats. Because nobody wants to yell at a Kevin for taking their time launching their boat. Now, the number 9 unwritten rule of fishing is one of my favorites, and that is that the early bird gets the worm. It's one thing to want to go fishing. It's another thing to get up at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. to be the first on the water and the first crack at the bite. First light fishing and early morning fishing is just something special. There is a nostalgia about seeing the sunrise, being first on the water, the crisp, cool air in the winter, the brightness of the early mornings in the summer. There's nothing like getting on the water early and getting that first bite. Now, whether you're chasing bass, salmon, trout, walleye, even sturgeon, the general rule of thumb is that the early morning is the best time for fishing. You got the sun that sometimes isn't up on the water yet. You got those cooler water temperatures, especially in the heat of the summer, and those fish are gonna bite much earlier when the coolest parts of the water. Not at the dead middle of the day when it's hot as frick. There are just days you get first crack on the water, and that's the best bite of the day, and everything else just completely dies and goes into shambles after that. And if you're gonna be an early bird to get on the water, make sure you got your coffee with you, because nobody likes a grumpy fisherman that hasn't had their coffee before their first cast. Now, coming in at rule number 8 actually has to do with fruit, and that is no bananas on the boat. Now, the ancient stories talk about ships that wrecked and crashed because they had fruit, specifically bananas, on the boat, and it was considered bad luck because the ships crashed and they sank to the bottom of the rivers, the oceans, or wherever those boats were. Now, there's a general theory, especially among fishermen, that still exists today, and that we should not be fishing with bananas in the boat. They're definitely bad luck. And I will say, I've been on a boat one day where somebody had a banana in their lunch sack and we got goose egg. Now, people can be funny and they'll catch fish even with like a gazillion bananas on the boat, but there is something to the rule of don't bring bananas on the boat. They're not good luck. And I'm telling you, definitely stay away from bananas. Apples, oranges, definitely just fine. Prunes, maybe stay away from those. Oh, and a PSA, apparently my dad thinks it's a funny joke to bring bananas on the boat because the last 2 times I took him out, he brought bananas with him, even though I specifically said, don't bring bananas. Now, coming in at unwritten rule number 7 is that boaters should yield to fishermen that are waiting and that are in the river fishing. Now, this especially comes true in close quarter rivers or streams when you got guys drift boat or power boating into small, narrow sections of the river where it can be nice and tight. And when you've got bank anglers or you've got guys waiting in the river that are fly fishing or gear casting from the river, this is where it can be very dangerous, or you can be fishing very close to each other. The unwritten rule is that boaters should yield to wade fishermen. You shouldn't drift and drive right past them. Like, give them space. We don't need accidents in the river. And if they're there first and fishing that space, then let them fish that space. If you're in a drift boat drifting, go around those folks. They have the hole. You don't need to interrupt or disrupt them, or basically float the boat right over the sweet spot in the river where the fish are sitting. That is just completely unacceptable. And if you're a fishing guide, you should definitely know better not to be doing that. If there's guys or gals in waders that are in the river fishing your favorite hole, you need to yield and let them have that hole. Now, unwritten rule number 6 is one of my favorites, and that is that you should always lie about the size and weight of your catch. Now, when you're taking videos or photos of the fish that you caught, or you're holding it before a catch and release, there are ways that you can manipulate via your camera to make it look like the fish that you caught is much, much bigger. And that leans into always lying about the size and the weight of your catch. Now, one of the things I'm pretty good at is embellishing the stories and the size of the catch of the fish that I have. Now, one of my favorite things to do is pretty much embellish some of the stories about how big a fish that I caught, or that I lost, or the one that got away, or that 12-pound lunker log, at the bottom of the river. And you know what? It's okay to embellish how big that size of the fish is, because if you didn't measure it, or you didn't weigh it, it could be as big as you want it to be. But if you keep hearing the same fishing story from your same buddy year over year over year, and that fish goes from, say, a 14-pounder to a 15-pounder to a 17-pounder, you better call them out and check to see if they're okay. Right, Dad? Now, coming in at unwritten rule number 5 is don't low hole. Now, if you've never heard of low holing in terms of fishing vocabulary, let me explain. Low holing typically happens on a river system where when you have water flowing, you have the top of the run where the ripples, and then it gets to the smooth water into the next ripple. So as you're traveling down the river, the top of the hole is when you first engage it, and the bottom of the hole, the lowest section, is the bottom part of that run. The rule of thumb is you should start at the top of the hole and work your way down to the lowest part of the hole. Now, bank fishing, that's a little bit easier. Again, with the drift boat, fish the top end of the hole and work your way down to the bottom of the hole. Now, whether you're bank fishing or you're in a boat, if somebody is fishing at the top end of the hole and you just go right below them to the very bottom of the hole, that's called low holing. And in bank fishing, you should be following the guy at the top of the hole and work your way down. So if you're fishing the water, start at the top, work your way down, and work behind your buddy instead of just jumping right to the bottom where there might be a bunch of fish laying. You want to start at the top to see if there's fish there and work your way down. Same thing in a drift boat. If somebody's at the top of the hole, don't go right around them to then fish the bottom of the hole and take away their fish and some of the opportunities that might be there. Start at the top and work your way down. If you don't want to fish behind them in the drift boat, then move all the way down to the next hole and just skip the hole that they're in, because they have first right. They got there first. They should be able to fish the water first. But don't jump in front of them in the same hole and basically just low hole them out of some fish. Now, coming in at unwritten rule number 4, this one I think is very underrated, and that is to let the water rest. Again, another fishing vocabulary term, and let me explain if you've never heard about resting the water. So say you're fishing a little pond, or say a section in a river where there's a ton of fish, right? You're in the drift boat, you're sitting back there, and you're just hammering them, whether it's salmon, whether it's sturgeon, it might be steelhead. If there are a bunch of fish stacked up in a singular hole, and you're just beating them up, you're catching them every other cast, you're just whooping on them, there are times where then you are going to scatter the fish because you're fighting fish near that hole or that area where the fish are congregating up and trying to sit in the water. Now, what you want to end up doing though, to make sure those fish can reset and they're not scattered out and they're going to stay in there and wanting to continue to bite, let that hole rest for 15 to 20 minutes, sometimes even maybe 30 minutes. Let things settle down and then throw your baits back in there to keep catching them. I have seen it where anglers, whether bank fishing or from a boat, continue to hammer a hole so hard that that hole basically becomes unfishable. The fish start to scatter, they don't want to bite, things become chaotic, or they just start to zip up the river because they want to get out of that hole. So you want to be respectful. Obviously, we still want to catch fish because that's awesome, but there are times, especially when the fish are stacked on top of each other into a single hole, it is good and good practice to let it rest for a little bit and then go back at it. Now, unwritten rule number 3, I think is a really critical one and one that you have to definitely pay very close attention to, and that is to be very quick with the photos or videos that you're taking of fish and keep the wild fish in the water as best as possible. Snap quick photos and then put them right back. Now, part of what I love about fishing is looking at photos and videos, seeing people catch monster fish and being able to have an amazing experience and enjoy that moment to capture either on video or with a photo. And a reminder to everybody, fish live in the water and we want to handle them with care. So if we're going to be taking them out of the water to hold them up for a photo, we want to make sure that fish is going to survive and be okay to be let back in the water. Now, different species can tolerate different times and amounts of time to being out of the water, but you shouldn't be keeping fish out of the water for very long, especially wild stocks of steelhead or trout or salmon, fish that you need to put back. Be very quick with the photo and then put them right back and let them get back into the water. Coming in at unwritten rule number 2, this is a rule I see broken all the time, and that is to give space and respect others when you're fishing very close to other anglers. Now, we all know fishing is really fun, but it can be challenging and annoying when fishing areas are super crowded, what we call combat fishing, and that people are crowding each other's spaces and not giving enough space in between anglers or areas that we're fishing. Now, there is a very big difference between fishing next to somebody at an arm's length versus 10 to 20 yards away and giving space. If yourself or somebody else is fishing a hole and you want to walk up and fish in that area, just be respectful. Ask, hey, is this too far? Is this too close? Hey, can I fish here? Is this too close to you? Just ask, right? We all want to make sure we give space for each other to fish, but not right on top of each other. And the other part is be respectful. You don't need to be nosy. You don't need to be looking and digging into people's tackle boxes. You don't need to be like up in their face asking what they caught, like looking around at what they're doing. Just be respectful of somebody's space. And again, if they're first, they have right to that spot. You shouldn't have to crowd them or basically crowd them so much to push them out. This is one of the rules that irritates me when I see people being really disrespectful of people's spaces when they're fishing. So now that we've been through unwritten rules 10 through 2, what is unwritten rule number 1? Well, that is to pick up your garbage after fishing. We should all do our part to clean up the area that we're fishing. If you pack something in, you pack it out and clean up the area that you're fishing. If there's garbage or stuff along the riverbank, the pond, the stream, wherever you're at, make it a cleaner place after you leave than when you arrive. You're gonna clean up garbage that could go back in the water and be harmful to the environment and to different fish species in that area. So do your part, clean up our waters and pack out as much garbage as possible and leave the area that you fished as clean as possible. And there you guys have it, the top 10 unwritten rules of fishing. I hope you guys took some notes and wrote these down and you don't forget them the next time you head out on the water. And if you're looking for additional fishing tips or content, I got a couple playlists right here you should definitely check out. I hope all of you enjoyed this unwritten rules of fishing video, and I'll see you guys on the next one.